Right, this is our live reaction to the MLB trade deadline. It's officially over as we record this on Monday, trade deadline day. It's 30 minutes after the deadline, and we know exactly what the Padres are getting now in the trade deadline. They have acquired Robbie Ray, they have acquired Casey Mize, they have acquired Gage Workman. Let's talk about Gage Workman first. At this point, he has only had a handful of at bats in the major leagues. Okay. He has done most of his damage in AAA. I think he has a total of like 50 something at bats in the big leagues. He does have 2 home runs in the bigs. That's this year. He's played on a handful of different teams, a couple of organizations. He is 26 years old and he's a left-handed bat. So this is something I think is a cheaper buy that you might be able to get some value out of. Maybe in the long run, I think it's a nice little, risk, if you will. It's not probably the big bat you wanted, but you know what? I think at that point when they were negotiating for Casey Mize, they probably couldn't go get a Larnach or a Alec Burleson. I think the Padres did a pretty good job with the trade deadline. I don't like the fact that they gave up Cash Mayfield for a rental pitcher, but the way Casey Mize has been pitching this year, we talked a lot about Robbie Ray already. The Padres made their rotation 100 times better than it was in these moves. The biggest loss, I think, is the Cash Mayfield part of it. I mean, you've already traded Jackson Wolf twice, and here's my thing on Jackson Wolf. If Jackson Wolf was worth what if he was really good, and the starting pitching is what it was, do you think he wouldn't have been up with the big league club already with being in El Paso for most of the time? So overall, I give it a solid B. I don't like the fact that you had to slightly overpay for Robbie Ray. I don't like the fact that you had to give up one of your top 3 prospects for Casey Mize. They're both rentals, but you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, and that was solidifying the rotation and adding a left-handed bat.
I don't think necessarily you're giving up Cash Mayfield for Casey Mize. I think you're giving him up for Gage Workman, and I think Workman would still fit up here on this roster if you send Rodolfo Duran down. Instead of carrying 3 catchers, you can now have 2 catchers. You'll have 4 outfielders, gives another outfield option, and 2 guys in Workman and Jace Bowen, 2 outfielders that don't have a lot of major league experience that could work towards it. So I think if you look more towards Cash Mayfield for Gage Workman, I think that kind of makes a little bit more sense as far as time that those guys have. But yes, it's undeniable that with what this Padres starting rotation was going into today, based off of what it is now at 3:34 p.m. on Monday, August 3rd, it is so much better than what it was this morning.
They don't trade anything from their bullpen, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah. I thought for sure, they might have flipped a Jeremiah Estrada for a Larnach, right? Or like move somebody in the bullpen to help your team. They don't do that. They trade away, a couple of prospects for, in arguably one of the worst farm systems in Major League Baseball, as picked out by, MLB Pipeline. And they're able to turn that without giving up Ethan Salas or Cruz Schoolcraft or Tucker Musgrove, and you're able to get 2 big arms for it. I think that's great. Now, the big conversation is, and we'll talk more about this on the talk show, you have to add Ray and Mize to this roster now. This like chaos pitching group at this point with Ray and Mize, you have to add, that's 2. Morgan and Adam are expected to be back sometime during August and early September. Musgrove and Pavetta are going on their rehab assignments starting Tuesday of this week, and who knows how that works out for the Padres. And Giolito is expected to return at some point this season. That is 7 pitchers that need to be added to this roster. Yeah, that's a lot that you're going to have to lop off. I mean, those are guys like interesting decisions about, has Kyle Hart pitched well enough to be on this team? I don't necessarily know he has done poor enough to not be on this team, but he's got options. JP Sears has options. But if you just take those two off, now you're thinking about Canning. Is he still on this team? Or Edman Marquez, is he still on this team? And if you cut those guys, that's four. You still got three more players that you have to part ways with. And we're talking about Estrada, Matsui, obviously not Miller or Morejon, Peralta, Rodriguez, Vasquez. I mean, cutting three out of that group or move it's going to be a difficult decision. Now, that's assuming that everybody is healthy and actually does come back. But it's an interesting conversation. But this pitching staff got a whole hell of a lot better after the trade deadline. And I think that means that A.J. Preller has done his job. I give it a B grade for this trade deadline.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen like a more established bat come in instead of Casey Mize. Then you're relying more heavily on Pivetta and Musgrove to come back and actually be effective and helpful this year. I'm still with you. I'd give it a B plus, I think, because you still managed. You got two very good pitchers for rentals. I'd be interested to see if there's one that you can re-sign, whether it be Robbie Ray or Mize. And you also got a controllable outfield bat that can help you for the next couple of years in Gage Workman. So it's really not a bad trade deadline at all if you're looking at it strictly from a San Diego Padres perspective.
Looking at the national standpoint, I think the Chicago Cubs excelled. I thought they had a great trade deadline. I think I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of other organizations. I thought the Giants did pretty well in getting some return for their moves. I thought the Angels did pretty decent in getting something back for some players that they had available. Those are the three off the top of my head that I thought did a very good job. But no, I don't think anybody did better than the Chicago Cubs.
No, the Chicago Cubs this year definitely won the trade deadline. I mean, that's I think easy.
Boston, I thought, did pretty well. I think they gave up a lot, though. I mean, they gave up a lot for Adley Rutschman. They gave up more for Adley Rutschman than the Dodgers did for Tarek Skubal, which I think is a little bit of a problem. But in terms of teams that I thought failed, I thought Milwaukee failed tremendously.
Yes.
For a team that's like just going off of the system, right? Of just going off the algorithm that they have, and they want equal trades all the time. They have proven time and time again that they don't have what it takes to make the big move to get over the hump. And that's a problem. That's a team that's not going to win a World Series. That's a team that's going to be always in contention. That's going to be a team that's always, potentially in the playoffs. That's a team hoping that they can get lucky in the postseason, but they don't have what it takes to make a run at a World Series because they don't have that go for it that like a lot of other teams have done in the past that have shown that they can win a World Series.
And it also, for me at least, being a Met fan, that opens my eyes to, why David Stearns is the way he is and what he was in Milwaukee compared to what he is in New York right now. He fit very well in their system with their mentality and with their logic and metrics. And when you have to go by feel and you have to go off of what needs to be done, he wasn't there. So it makes total sense as to why Stearns is a failure as a general manager with the New York Mets when he was decent and seemed like the next Theo Epstein with Milwaukee.
I do find it interesting to go back to what the Padres deal with, the Casey Mize deal. Baseball Trade Values says that the Casey Mize deal for the Padres is accepted. Which didn't say overpay for either team. It just said that was pretty fair trade. So you have to give up something good in order to get something in return. I just wanted to mention that. Now, another team that failed, I thought the Arizona failed. Arizona's in the thick of a playoff race right now, and Arizona needs pitching, and they didn't get it. They got Lars Nootbaar, which, again, was a good little pickup in terms of the offense, but he's hitting .237. He doesn't have a lot of home runs. He's a good player defensively. He's a solid player overall, but Lars Nootbaar, I don't think is going to take Arizona over the top. I think this is incredibly good news for the Padres, who are now rolling into Arizona with Michael King and Casey Mize and Robbie Ray, and that's a lot better than what it was on paper going into this series before. I think Arizona failed at this deadline. I don't think they did enough to, make this strong push in the second half, especially with the schedule that they have. I mean, we talked about that on the show. They have had a very difficult schedule coming up. They needed pitching. They didn't address the bullpen, and they didn't address the starting staff.
Forget about the starting pitching that they did not get. You take a look at, again, as you mentioned with the schedule, they're facing the team that's on their ass right now.
Right.
They have a 4-game series against the team that is a game behind them in the standings and seriously boosted their pitching staff. If I'm Arizona, I'm looking at this going, we should have done something here. Like the team that we're facing, the team that we're trying to keep behind, one has finally got their lineup sorted out, which is going to be a big problem for all of us. And now they've got starting pitching, both of which they're most likely going to see because Mize hasn't pitched because Detroit knew he was going to get traded. And now Robbie Ray, who's scheduled to go on Tuesday, may possibly pitch on Wednesday. That's a huge failure for Arizona, seeing the team in town bring in 2 very, very good guys to fix what has been a broken starting rotation all season long.
We're talking about some of the failures. I do think Philadelphia did pretty well during the trade deadline to help improve their team. I thought Miami handled the trade deadline fairly well as well. Another big failure I thought was New York. I thought the Yankees got a lot of bats. They got a couple of bats, but for a team that was desperately looking for relief pitching, and they were looking at, big targets like Mason Miller and Adrian Morejon, they came up empty in this year's trade deadline.
It's been the biggest bug about the New York Yankees and about Brian Cashman is he does not go after pitching. He was on the verge of getting fired when they made the signing for Garrett Cole, which is like, okay, see, got some pitching guys. Here it is. But that has been the big complaint about Brian Cashman is he does not go after pitching ever. He thinks your offense is going to outdo whatever deficit the pitching is going to put you in. And you can see since 2009 where that has gotten them. It has gotten them nothing.
Yeah. So overall, I think there were some teams that were too afraid to make a move. I think there were some teams that overlooked a glaring hole. I thought there were some teams that absolutely crushed it. And I thought the Padres did solid for what they needed. That's our initial reaction to the trade deadline. Again, we will have more reaction on the show throughout the week, but that was our initial trade deadline reaction.